Hello and welcome to the By Intent channel. I'm Raki Natha, and it is my pleasure to welcome today's guest to the By Intent channel. It's Lisa Staprans. Lisa has over 25 years of interior design experience working on residential and commercial projects around the country. These are high profile and award-winning projects at that. Lisa studied art, architecture, and art history at Berkeley, and she furthered her education at Parsons in New York. And Lisa has won numerous awards for her work, one of them being from the American Institute of Architects for her work on the Portola Valley Town Library, which is a Platinum LEED certified project. So I really resonated with Lisa's work because she brings the soul of design into all of her projects. And Lisa believes that artistically driven and emotionally connective interiors have the ability to transform one's entire state of being. That's really powerful, and I had the opportunity to listen and learn from Lisa at a Berkeley session, and I really wanted to share and extend this knowledge to the entire By Intent community. So Lisa, a very, very warm welcome. Thank you so much for being here and offering your time and your knowledge to us. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. And in tradition of how I usually start talks and interviews, I'm going to ring the bell just to kind of settle the energy and bring us into this new space. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. That was stunning. Yeah, I think to get us started, I'll go into the kind of first question that comes up for me. And it's linked to a slide that you showed at the Berkeley session, which was so simple, but again, so powerful. And it depicted that, we spend, well, we are very well aware that we need to spend, 3 meals a day on really good food. We need to spend 3 times a week on making sure that we work out or move our bodies in some way. But have we considered that we spend 24 hours a day within some form of an environment? And so environments are really impacting us. And that really hit home for me. I hadn't seen it, put out there so simply and for something to think about. How would you say that our environment is impacting our well-being, or how important is it to our well-being?
Well, I thought that when I used that example, I really wanted it to resonate so people could feel and understand that we do think typically in this area and in a lot of the United States and in many parts of the world, we do think about how we can be healthier and how we can take care of our bodies. We drink lots of water, we exercise, we do our best to eat well. And to take that same concept and think about what's around you all the time, where you sleep, how you sleep, when you wake up, what's the room feel like, what's it look like. There's a lot of studies that show and make a point of that our environments can have as much of an impact as our diet, nutrition, well-being, health. Like if you take all the right things and you eat well and you exercise, but your environment makes you anxious and angry, it's going to somewhat negate all that hard work you do to try to live a healthy life. And now we have a lot more studies that indicate this. So I really, it needs to be an awareness that, because it's around us all the time. I mean, 24/7, even when you walk outside and you walk into another place. I mean, you can walk outside in nature, but you're still going to go from point A to B, or you're going to get in your car and go somewhere. So even your car environment affects you. When you're on a bicycle, your bicycle affects you. When you go to pick up groceries, that grocery store experience, or if you have your food delivered, what's the box like? There's all these subliminal messages that are all around us all the time. And I'm saying if we pay more attention to the triggers of these environments, just like when we eat something we love that's really healthy, it will just make us feel better. I'll have a good energy about it. Just as that even subconscious environment, once you start to look at it, you go, oh, you become much more conscious of it. And then you become more conscious of the physiological triggers or experiences it gives you.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was kind of, what was coming up for me is what is the physiological link? And I know you deal with the neuroscience and looking at the brain as well. And I think that's phenomenal. I mean, we're learning so much about the brain that we didn't know a decade ago or 20 years ago. And what have we learned? What do we know about the physiological link between design and the brain? And really how design is impacting us cognitively, but also psychologically.
Mhm. And that's something that I'm extremely passionate about because I've experienced it firsthand, very personally. And from that experience, when I had cancer many years ago and having to choose the type of places where I would get treatment. And I've been an interior designer for over 25 years, and I've created spaces for many types of situations. And I have seen a real impact on people's lives. And it's really quite profound how you can help people find that kind of sense of inner happiness. But when I was confronted with having to choose where to get chemotherapy infusion, it was really kind of a wake-up call. Like, wait a minute, I have to sit, you're real terrified to begin with, and you're on edge, and then you have to decide where you're going to get your treatments. And I was really sensitive to it. And I realized I can bring this into my work too, because I knew my heart rate was higher. I knew I was more anxious. I knew the environment would help me handle what I was going through. And it became very, very real. And thankfully now, I mean, but even then it was beginning to become more of an art and a science. But now, health centers, hospitals, there's a lot of studies, and it's very intentional now how things are designed to help your brain chemistry, your neurotransmitters, your physiology, your psychology, your sense of well-being. And I talked in both of, and in the talks I've given, I talk a lot about the science behind how you lower heart rate and the tools you can use, how you take down anxiety, how you're more receptive to healing, how you have to have less pain medication. I mean, it's remarkable. So imagine that's in a healthcare setting. Imagine if you're home, you walk in and you come in, you had a hectic day, or even during this pandemic, we're all a little bit, we can be frazzled sometimes. If you come into your relaxation or your home environment, what can you do to have the same tools? And they're very similar tools. And so it started me on a journey, which is a wonderful journey. And so I think things happen to us for a reason. That was part of my story, needed to then propel me to the next level of the story, that everything relates to our brain chemistry, really controls everything in our body. I mean, with we don't have an operating brain, our body won't be able to function. So it's so integral to our absolute core and health. So yeah, it's something I feel that having more awareness of is just going to help us create even more meaningful environments that can transform us.
Yeah, and I see this coming up in many industries. I saw somebody talking about the link between patisserie and chocolate and
Yeah.
neuroscience.
Or you walk in, when I travel a lot. Right now, I'm not traveling, obviously, but I'm always checking out the shops. And you walk into a shop, especially in Paris, they really love their shops. Or, how you get drawn in, all the nuance. And that's all very intentional. Parisian shops are very intentional with the neuroscience of the beauty, or how they bring you into the shop. Or people use great restaurants or bakeries. They use smell. And then you go in and the smell triggers an experience or memory, and you might want more of it. And so there's all these things we can do with our brain triggers from memory, because memory really makes us human, because we have memory and stories and triggers and experiences. So yeah, it's in all industries. You're right. Hospitality, food, sports, when you travel, hotels, airplanes. I mean, everybody's vying for your who's going to want to be here more, and even when they do movies, how they set the scenes, how they create the set design and the tone, so that experience will propel you somewhere else or bring you someplace deep inside yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm not going to mention the name of this hotel because I'm not sure if I can, but there's a hotel chain in New York and then London, a few places. And I was in New York in December. And, they took that sensual sort of experience, the sensory experience, to a whole nother level. I mean, the minute you walk in, you're hit with a very strong scent. The design was intense. The minute you stepped in, you you kind of felt like you had left New York City immediately. And it was so interesting in the rooms and every piece of lighting. And we really felt like we were on some sort of a resort, Bali kind of getaway. But then you step out and then you're right in the heart of Times Square. And it was so interesting. And even the fragrance that, I mean, I was exposed to in December, I still kind of have these memories that triggers that fragrance. And I'm like, how strong was that? So I think that speaks to it. One of the things, and one of the things that everyone talks about now, and everybody wants to maximize this as well, is kind of, you know, what we would call the positive neurotransmitters, right? Or the good ones, your dopamine, oxytocin. And what do we know, or what in design can impact those sorts of positive neurotransmitters? What can maximize it?
So yeah, you're right. The dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, they're kind of the banded, you know, feel-good neurotransmitter trio. And then they all layer into the endorphins, which, you know, the endorphins are so important. And when you have alignment, like you have good dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and the endorphins become the stress fighters and help keep your immune system strong. And there's thankfully a lot of studies, and now environments are being built very intentionally, probably like that experience you had at the hotel in New York, that when you go into a situation, you will trigger the parts of your brain that will trigger the good feelings. Like the dopamine is responsible for feeling pleasure and satisfaction. So there's a science now to what can we do with, if it's daylight planes, views to nature, certain smells, and even taste. Like you go to your room and there's something waiting for you. And you walk in and go, I have a little treat. Someone cares about me, right? Serotonin regulates mood, social behavior, sleep, memory, and desire. And then oxytocin plays a major role in bonding and well-being. So we create environments now, that's a collective profession that I strive for. And in everything in a lot of very intentional creation is done now to trigger these really good neurotransmitters, and to also counterbalance if you do have triggers with, you know, the cortisol or the cortisone that could, you know, kind of, that can give, it's a fight or flight mechanism where you're just edgy and you're on edge and you're like, oh, sometimes people want to, there might be a reminder of that, but it'll bring you back to the feel good, so you have a balance. So there's a lot of tools that are used, like I said, you know, high ceilings, which promote, you know, creativity and more broader thinking. Lower ceilings will make it feel more cozy and kind of nesting in. Views to nature have been proven to lower your heart rate. And, you know, certain types of music, you know, music can make you feel much more kind of calm and settled, but you can't have an overload of these things. Then you can get into the fight or flight cortisol release. You want to have it, it's got to be very well orchestrated. And it's really good when you don't quite know what it is. You know, something's affected you.
Yeah.
And you know you're being changed or transformed, and you just feel better. And all these elements combined, like even the use of natural materials, you know, soft edges versus hard edges, certain colors energize, like red, or blue might be calming. Lighting, obviously. I mean, lighting and color are real game changers, but lighting, if you don't really want flickering fluorescent lights, they're going to make you edgy, but you want light bulbs that mimic natural daylight, and hopefully on dimmers. You don't want to walk in and be overwhelmed with light. and luckily now we have a lot of art and artisan made products and how things are created that also have that same impact with creating the chain and the beautiful reaction with the feel-good neurotransmitters.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm sure this is something that people are thinking, or the average person is probably thinking, well, what in my environment might be hurting me right now? I think I know how to maybe enhance it or make it better, but I think we all, you know, the focus on well-being and understanding everything that is so subliminal, but still impactful to our health. I think people probably have the question around what could very sneakishly or even very subtly be in our environments that might be increasing our stress and our cortisol levels. Is there something like that we should watch out for, or you could talk to? And I know it's a tough one. It depends on each environment, but are there some of those ones that are the culprits? They're always the culprits.
I think so, and I think, and because it's sneakish, or it's something that's not right in front of you, it's almost the thing you should pay more attention to. And I talk about that in, the whole philosophy of have things in front of you or to have things in your life that bring you joy. I think it's just as important to look at the things that don't bring you joy. So when you're in your environment, if it's a home environment, that you're more aware of when you're in there. And if you all of a sudden just feel kind of edgy, or you're just like, oh, that just drives me crazy, you really should do something about it versus just saying, I'm too busy, I can't get to it. It could be as simple as, I hate that mug that I've been using forever. Are those glasses I put water in, like that I drink out of?
Yeah.
I look at that glass and it doesn't really do anything for me. Why am I using such vital time and energy in a water glass that doesn't bring me joy? It's a simple, simple thing. And that's something you might not even notice. It's on the shelf. It's always been there. You're like, well, it's always been there. Maybe you should think about what's always been there and what it's doing for you. Or if it's that pile or that layer of clothes in the closet, or even the hangers in your closet. These are little tiny things. The color of your towels. There could be a photo of someone that just kind of makes you crazy, but they're still on the wall. Now, maybe you should not put the photo on the wall. And it might be something you're just so used to. You know how it is. We all get in our environments. We don't notice things. I'm suggesting that you walk in your environment and notice. Don't make it overwhelming. Just say, notice and go. And then notice if you're kind of not really able to relax and go, what is in this room that's triggering me? And it could be simple. It could be a chair. It could be a pillow. It could be just like there's a happy memory. You might have something in your life that you've carried around forever because it brings you up a really happy memory of a relative that brought you great joy, or someone in your life, or world travel, or a small travel, or a big travel. It's the same thing. And I think it's the sneaky things you better pay more attention to because they're subtle, right? It could be opening up your silverware drawer. And why do we always put away the good stuff and not use it? I suggest to all my clients, we always have maybe multiple sets of things, but use the good stuff. What are you waiting for? This is it. This is life. I mean, we're living it, right? If it brings you joy and it's beautiful, use it. That's what it's for, So I think these little sneaky things are the most profound because that will wear you down. And sometimes you don't even know what's wearing you down. But if you become aware and you could begin to make changes, I think you'll find a lightness to your being that you didn't have before. And it's just a matter of opening your heart and your mind, or just being receptive to how the subtle things are making you feel.
Yeah, I love that lightness of being. And you spoke about, finding joy or having joy in the things that you have. And I know you spoke a little bit about it in the Berkeley session as well. And, referring to Marie Kondo and the kind of revolution that started for a lot of people. But going back to that, and this is almost, it's questioning that. And it's saying, and I guess the question that comes up for me is saying, certainly we want to keep our environments filled with things that bring us joy and hold on to those things. But if we look at the brain science, and it's really a question, right? But if we look at the brain science, do we sometimes need things in our environment that are points of conflict, that trigger us in a different way? And I thought about this because of an example of Grant Achatz. He owns a Linear in Chicago. It's, one of the top restaurants in the world. And a while back, he shared a post about, his design space. And he keeps his office very minimal, really nothing much. It's just his natural aesthetic. But he has one thing on there that he kind of shared with everybody he's had for many years. And it's a complaint letter from somebody from the beginning days of when they started a Linear. But he, there's no awards, nothing like that. He keeps this one letter, and he says that keeps him humble. So he's got it framed. It's on his wall, and he says not only does it keep him humble, but it keeps his drive to continually do better. And I found that so interesting. And I was just wondering, like you said, there's so much nuance. There's orchestration that needs to happen in how you design a space. But what about do we need these points of conflict or trigger as well?
Well, absolutely. I think, and I'm really glad you asked that question because it becomes, it's like asking the question when we think about the neuroscience of our lives and what cortisol does. Well, cortisol has been with us since the beginning of our evolution. It's a fight or flight mechanism. It's actually saved our lives. It keeps us alive. But if we have too much of it, it can kill us. If we don't have enough of it, we get a little bit complacent. And I think that is that balancing act of you need to be reminded what may have been transformative for you. And that letter or that note to him keeps him, you know, there was a moment where he said, this is really important to me in my business, that I never forget that is what one of my primary objectives is, or what my, you know, what keeps me, you know, going. And I think we should all have something in our environments that reminds us of why we go out there and fight the fight. Why do we work so hard towards something and we're so passionate? There's usually an underlying negative to the positive. And when thinking about that question, I have a photograph in my space of when I didn't have hair from chemo, and I thought, why did you have a cancer photo? I go, because it transformed me. I use that experience as a positive thing, and it makes me realize that I want to be even truer and even work harder in my life, and also live these principles I talk about, because I believe it can keep us healthier, and that it reminds me of that what can happen to you if you might forget about certain things, and you need to be reminded of the good and bad. So I think it's not that you want it everywhere, but I think it's very important to have those reminders and that trigger that reminds you of what brings the good out of the negative. You know, and I run a very, you know, high touch, high service business. And I do remind my team all the time that we're there to really take care of people. And sometimes I use the negative stories to say, you know, this is what's expected. Is this something you think you can do? You know, you have to really be able to work in a certain way. So to be reminded of not dwelling on the negative, but the negative can propel us to be better, and to be out there in the world and knowing what it takes, right? You need to be reminded sometimes. You don't want to get complacent. You know, we have to always be on our toes to be the best we can be. Hopefully, and if we have these nice checkpoints of balance, it will give us energy, right? It won't deplete our energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just thinking about that makes you realize how much is involved in thinking about the design of space.
Yeah.
It's the furthest thing from simple. You know, there's so much complexity to getting that balance, which is exciting, which is pretty exciting. One of the other things that kind of I was thinking about, and you mentioned one example, you spoke about high ceilings, helping with creativity. Do we know about anything else that helps with creativity and focus or imagination?
Well, something that I do research on, and I bring into the work I do, is if we go back in time to ancient cultures, to some of the greatest buildings ever created. I mean, if you know, temples, shrines, great palaces, you know, incredible cathedrals, you know, wonders of the world. And I do go to wonders of the world because I want to understand when I stand there, why is this a wonder of the world? Because it's just, it takes you don't think it's possible, but it is. So a high ceiling that soars to the sky, or at the time to the heavens, if it's a cathedral. If it's a temple, it's to that version of that culture's god. If it's Stonehenge, for example, big stones, how they lugged them and put them there to, you know, have this story about the earth and the sun and movement. It has been proven that these places open our minds. So if we study ancient cultures, great buildings, great architectural, great even natural wonders, we will be open to possibility we didn't know existed before. Because it's just amazing that mankind made it. So it gives us, there's studies that will explain, and I've experienced this personally, and I bring this into my work, there always has to be a bit of wonder and something unexpected. And then whoever's in those spaces, they'll kind of maybe subliminally, you might not even know what's happening to you, but you'll realize there's more potential than you realize. And that's through these tools in the toolbox of alignment, daylight, height, natural light combined with, you have to have artificial light, color. So so I always go back to the great architecture on our planet that humankind has created, as well as nature, to open up our minds. You know, it makes you realize we don't have limits. And so you have to experience things that seem limitless to help to trigger the chemistry inside your body and your brain and body, to make you realize, wow, we really are amazing creatures. We really can create these things. So those examples, just like ancient cultures studied and how they created spaces, and they saw a real impact on their communities and their people, and it's been documented. And great cultures of, you know, traditional Batsu or Feng Shui, you know, alignments. They've proven that, you know, someone can feel really agitated. They can shift a space and all of a sudden they'll feel more creative, more open, more receptive. And I'm thankful there's studies, and there's still going to be a lot more studies, and, you know, the architecture of happiness, the neuroscience of beauty, all these things are going to begin to make this common. We're going to use this as a tool all the time, because humans, we want to strive. We want to know we have this kind of deep, beautiful potential, but sometimes we don't know how to tap into it. So I would say, if you're looking for more of it, you go to a place that I go to places around the world that I hear about. I just go, oh, did you hear, you know, you read about, and that place is supposed to make you feel, you know, more transcendent or more at peace, or, you know, maybe even more edgy, whatever it is. You want that experience. You want to go feel these places so you can understand the tools that were used, and also where things are positioned in the landscape. You know, how you place a building, how it has alignment with the way the light changes, the sunrise, sunset, you know, how you place things in relation to their land and environment. So it's a seemingly simple question, but it's very involved, right? And there are key points. I do research on this, that tools you can use when you study all these wonderful buildings and places on the planet that will invoke these things. And people do it through experiences or writings or what they learned when they were there. I think if you were to put probes on someone in some of these experiences, you could track the neurotransmitters and what it was triggering in either your hippocampus, which is the memory part of your brain, or what it's triggering in the part of your brain that is responsible for calm feelings or not calm feelings. I think we'll begin to realize that it's pretty amazing.
That is
It's a good question. I thought it's going to be a good chapter.
yeah, that's amazing. And one of the things you spoke about within there, and that was kind of packaged in there, was nature, right? And this integration with nature. And, you know, there's words that are quite big these days, like biophilia and biomimicry, and nature being a part of design, being really important, of course, from a sustainability perspective as well. But I think, again, for most of us, the understanding is at an aesthetic level. We don't really understand the depth of how does nature actually impact us, right? So how does nature impact, how does it truly impact design? What does it do?
Well, nature really is where it all starts. And I think I keep thinking about how we evolved as humans, and how nature, how you position our first dwellings as we were evolving as a species, you know, making sure that your environment is safe, you're protected. You'll see that environments were over time embellished. There'd be, you know, beautiful paintings inside of buildings or outside, and I think when we bring the nature in, or we're respectful of the nature around us, we're more connected to kind of our DNA, where we came from. And I notice almost everywhere I go, and especially a lot also when I travel, because travel in airports gets massive amounts of people. And I was thinking, you know, this bringing nature in, a lot of airports now have living walls. They have these indoor atriums. That's pretty new. I've noticed it more in the last 10 or 15 years. And I go, oh, that's interesting. I'm glad they're bringing that in. Or they have sculptures or art that will bring in elements of nature. And so we can say, well, gosh, there's a nice plant in there, a nice living wall, or that sculpture. I'm not sure what it's kind of doing for me, but I just really enjoy looking at it, because shapes in nature usually are calming, or they make it, like with the pandemic, a lot of people are going on walks, or they're going outside and they're getting fresh air. The nature gives us a sense of, you know, that we're connected to something bigger than ourselves. And it's usually quite beautiful, you know, and there's all these different shapes and colors. So I think throughout the evolution of humankind, nature has been integral, and it's at the root of everything. Shapes, curves, angles. You can go to almost anything in nature and see the reflection of shapes. And then, you know, water, sky, you know, it relates to everything. Color. I mean, it's amazing to think about color. I mean, there's every shade, every kind of color. When you look at an ocean, all the shades of blue, or depending upon which sea it is in the world, the shades of green. It is what we humans have used, have turned to nature to guide us, to be our foundation. And it's been proven, like if you're in a room without windows, without view lines, without any kind of, if it's just a stark room, and it's interesting because if you do studies on what kind of makes you edgy, if you're, and this is where typically, you know, when you want to make people uncomfortable, you put them in a room without a window or hard walls and nothing in it, and it's very stark. It might be in a prison setting or in, you know, situations where you don't want people to be comfortable. You take away nature. You take away anything that has a semblance of nature. And humans are out of their element. We're kind of, that's not a healthy situation. So really the best environments in the world bring nature in through materials, through light, through, like, you use stone, you use wood, you use the beauty of light, you know, the nuance of light and reflected light, which we find in nature. So I really believe it's at the foundation of everything, and you can bring more in or less in, but you need some element for, as humans, for us at our absolute core, to feel more connected. And I think even if you don't have a lot of nature around you, I think if you do something as simple as go on a walk and grab a branch and put it in a little vase and stick it on a little side table in a little corner, if you don't have a big space, that little bit of greenery is going to just have this little tiny, beautiful, nuanced effect on you. And so, but it's really, really wonderful when you start to really notice the influence of nature on really everything. And it's essential. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's exciting to see the move.
Absolutely.
And I think we can all feel the impact of it in the spaces we visit, is that it's making a difference. And I'm glad we've moved away from the very industrial nature of buildings and moving, you know, further away from that. One of the other things that kind of pops up for me is you spoke a lot about visiting interesting places and different cultures and kind of exposure to these amazing wonders of the world, and a little bit about ancient civilizations coming up for me. But do sort of techniques in Vastu Shastra, Feng Shui, what does that lend to the world of design? Is it important? Should that be incorporated? Should we be thinking more about that as well, and how that impacts our space?
I think, I know for me, it's a fundamental part of my toolbox of what I bring to projects and how I look at the world. And it does break down to basic principles of alignment, you know, how daylight planes align with the positioning of a building on a site, and how the sun affects it, how, you know, what colors you bring into the space, where the light falls in the space, how you align furniture or staircases or doors, colors of front doors, how energy can intersect with other energy. And energy, that's a very kind of abstract term. And it can sound like, oh, that sounds kind of, you know, Californian or a little bit too new age. But these are principles that have been practiced, you know, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. They've had time to, when you go to a place and things are maybe a bigger scale, or the alignment is aligned with a certain body of water somewhere, or the door isn't right at the other side of a stair, so all the energy just fly out of the space. Or I tell people, you know, you shouldn't really put a bed right in front of a doorway if you can not do that, because you're going to feel like you're always exposed. Or if you have your back to a door, or you're in a room and you can see what's coming at you from different sides. These are basic principles of ancient traditions. And something that I just thought of, I do work with, it depends on the project, but I do work with consultants around the globe when needed. And I have one consultant, he's an expert, and comes in and he makes sure that the site has all the proper alignments. And he does a Google Maps view, and he tests the site. And often it's nice to bring them before we even start the construction. Sometimes the architect, I work with a lot of wonderful architects. I can say, hey, I want to bring in this expert to check the site alignments. I'm like, really? They go, yeah, no, it really works. And sometimes I don't tell people, I just do it. I make subtle suggestions because I don't want anyone to think this is, you know, I think it's actually a tool that should be used for everything. But there was an example one of my consultants used. He told me once that he had a property he was consulting on, and these clients had these very high-strung racehorses, and they needed their horses to be happy because they were racing racehorses. And he said they knew something was wrong. The horses were really anxious. And so he did a Google Maps view of where the barns were in the house, and he noticed right away the alignment of the barns was out of balance with it, where it was placed in the property. And this has to do with these ancient traditions, you know, these studies of placement, alignments, you know, where things sit in their environments. And he advised the clients to move the barn and that it was in the wrong position. They moved the barn because they needed the horses to be happy to perform, and it worked. And he didn't say this because he's trying to get business. It really worked. He says, it's an amazing science to study these ancient traditions that have been around for so long for alignments and placements. And they can relate to something as simple as like, that's a bigger example. I've had other projects where we've done alignments and house blessings and, the right colors for energy, the right kind of front door color. But it's something that it could be as simple as moving a chair. I sometimes have a client go, I don't know what's wrong, I just feel blocked. So you can use these ancient traditions that are so essential, and if you've studied them and understand, and there's quite an art and a science to it, but you can do things where you change the energy of a room. You can just move the room around. You don't have to build a whole new house or move a whole building. If you just have an awareness and you study some of the basic principles, and you can always dive deeper, but you can take energy and unblock it in a space. It's really amazing. And I've done it enough that it works. And it might seem like, wow, that's amazing, that works. But you could just move, like I said, move the bed across from a door. If you have a tiny room, you change a color somewhere or place an object that might reflect light differently. Because I use a lot of alchemy, different types of metals to reflect or to bounce light around, or use mirrors. So these wonderful tools. And I'm glad you brought that up, because it's very important we honor how we've evolved through these amazing, these science and the way that things have been created with culture and time, to us to evolve into the next part of our evolution as humans. And I think we're going to use a lot more of those foundational understanding of things to continue to complement the neurochemistry and the healthy balance in spaces. It's a long-winded response. Sorry, I just get kind of excited about it. It's just so incredible, actually. It works. Yeah. I mean, I feel like a house doctor sometimes. It works. What? We're going to do what? We're going to put that kind of orb over there and go, yeah. Or we're going to put this mirror and it has some brass and that's nickel over there. Or we're going to put, that's going to be blue or that's going to be red. Or we're going to just have to change that window. Yeah. Trust me. And I will tell people, if you don't trust me, don't worry, I'll put it back. If it doesn't help, I'll just put it back. Yeah. And it's okay. And I say, just be open-hearted to the possibilities, right? Or open-minded.
Exactly. No, I truly, honestly, I've tested one or two things and I'm with you. It works, and I come from Hinduism. That's my sort of family heritage, but of course, modern lifestyle, we've forgotten a lot of, what my parents would have known. And, I did something simple, but I moved where I actually kept my handbag and my wallet based on the Vastu Shastra principles. And I felt like it made a difference, just little things, kind of serendipities on, okay, I'm not spending wastelessly. My finances kind of improved in a strange way. And I was like, okay, is this aligned? I did something similar with my desk. I think in Feng Shui, you've got to make sure you're facing the door. And you've got your back against the wall. So I've tried those things and it works. It certainly worked for me. And that's exactly what kind of led me to ask about it, because I think a lot of people are recognizing that and saying, look, this stuff has been done for so many years. So there must be validity to this.
Well, when you have your back to a door, that's a great example of releasing more cortisol, because you don't know what's behind you. And we evolved our DNA and our basic molecular structure. We have, that's still in us as humans, that something can get us, right? So there's this subliminal thing that, okay, there's a simple thing you can do. And you might say, oh my God, my room, I can't do it. The room, it won't work. I go, well, maybe you have to get a smaller desk. Maybe we have to rethink what you have in here. Maybe we reorient it. Maybe your office needs to be in a different place, your desk. But it is really an amazing thing when you understand the neurochemistry transmitters, as well as the physical space and the supposed or possible constraints that can become opportunities, that you may just have to change the scale. But it is something, and some people they just don't know what it is. And if we can just help people see what it is, they'll go, wow, because every human should have the opportunity to experience that those feel-good feelings. There's always going to be the yin and yang and the light and dark, or the good and bad, but let's optimize our situation, right? So we can be the best we can be, so we're not edgy, or we can, you're absolutely right. Placement of a handbag, where you put your keys, how much of a hassle is it where it is? It is another pile. Where do you put it? If you have an ease of getting to things and they have their place, You know, you don't have to have everything completely, I mean, it's nice to have everything organized, but we have to live the way we feel comfortable. But it's amazing, right? The simple things that can be so transformative. And that's why, you know, that's why I love what I do, because you can really see differences for people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I hadn't even thought about, you know, the brain science around the door. And I mean, wow, I mean, that's phenomenal.
And when you think about it, it kind of makes sense, because if you don't know
Absolutely.
what's coming, you
Yeah.
know, and you don't know what's behind you, it can just be this subconscious, you know, kind of quiet
Yeah.
part of that kind of what's the secret part that I'm not noticing. Well, oh my gosh, that makes sense, right?
Yeah, no, that's phenomenal. And we've touched on so many incredible concepts, ideas. I learned so much from you from the Berkeley session, and I'm learning so much in today's session. But I know that you are busy writing your book,
Yes.
which I'm very excited about, and I think you have a waiting list.
Yeah,
of
I know. I can't wait
people
to finish. I just have to.
who-
Yeah.
But yeah, tell us a little bit more about the book.
So it's very important to me. I call it, I'm working on the title, but the soul of design and the neuroscience of beauty.
Yeah.
And beauty exists in many forms. Beauty is subjective. Neuroscience is not as subjective. It's scientific, but what's subjective about it is everybody reacts differently to different things. And I believe we can change our lives, our health, our well-being, our state of mind through the intentional way we do things in my world of design, which does bring a lot of beauty and a lot of practicality, because we do a lot of interior architecture, a lot of planning. It's very complex when you're creating spaces, buildings, you know, making decisions, that all these things can have an impact and a ripple effect. And that ripple effect can be in so many places you may not even realize. So my goal with the book is to plant the seeds of all the things that have an impact, and how the basis is understanding the soul of design is how can we create as humans more and more spaces that will affect you in a place that's your deepest down, truest self. And that's what I call our soul. I mean, a soul is a topic that, that it brings up all kinds of feelings, like, well, what's a soul? Like, oh my gosh, I don't know what my soul is. But if you really do quiet yourself and you listen, you can get things can bring things to your truest, quietest self, which is your soul. It's kind of your truest form of yourself. And then we can understand how our brain, if our soul feels taken care of and at peace as much as possible, then we can have healthy neuroscience, which will then kind of guide our physiology and our health. And, you know, I know that unhealthy neurotransmitters and environments that don't bring you calm and happiness will not help you be a healthier human being. And I know that from personal experience, because I've having dealt with cancer, but I also know I've seen the work that I've done that's affected so many people, and they don't always have to know about it. So I'll talk about in the book, there'll be the neuroscience part, and I have backing with real neuroscientists and doctors and people who are very committed to the brain science, and then psychologists to really give the understanding of what the triggers do to your mental, to your psychology. And then I tie it into what the beauty and design is. And that design is something we have all around us. It can be as simple as the design of a leaf outside, the chair you're sitting in. Just that single chair can trigger all kinds of things. What you have in your environment, the colors, the alignments, the pieces. And then I will be talking about the ethical and sustainable consumption aspect of what we bring into our lives as humans all around the world, and how it's manufactured. What are the techniques? How do we treat other humans? And I will be delving into some of the chapters on ancient cultures and some of the great world architecture. How was it built? Were people suffering? Were they not suffering? What were those cultures like? What did we get from that as humans? There's so many layers. So of what the neuroscience, the soul of design and the neuroscience of beauty is, that everything affects everything. There's a cause and effect. So I'll have the kind of broader beauty part, and then the toolkit of color alignment, you know, all the great principles of architecture and design, and then kind of what each neurotransmitter does in your brain and why, and then how it relates to how I bridge the gap to the beauty and design part, and using design examples and then a toolkit so people can actually learn to utilize it in their everyday lives. And also the office environments, school environments, hospitality. I mean, it affects everything, right? So it's really, really a wonderful thing, but I'm trying to make the book not so overwhelming. I'm trying to make it very usable, but have the science to back it. So people know that this is scientifically based and there can be tools that everybody can use. And understanding from, explaining in a way that's hopefully exciting, that we can create these amazing spaces that rejuvenate us as humans and inspire us. And it can be, it's doable. It's not like you just have to hire a designer and you have to be able to create a whole new building to start over. You can actually create it within your current spaces too. Or if you go into a space and it doesn't make you happy, just don't go back there. Maybe don't give that company business. Maybe don't work with the companies that don't really support this whole ripple effect of how we consume as human beings, because as we know, consumption affects our environment. And the industry of construction and my industry that I'm in, there's a lot of waste. And we need to think about how we create things and how much waste is involved. So that's a whole nother part of what I would be writing about, is just mostly not to preach, just to plant the seeds that when you're buying something, that element, that object can affect this huge ripple effect. And if we can all be aware and maybe get more alignments, we can maybe transform how, as a global community, which we are now, we're all global now, with everything going on, we're more connected than we ever were. And we can help each other evolve to think about these things. And it stems from this simple, beautiful thing of beauty, right? We just want the beauty, but how you get that and how you create that has all these ramifications. So that's my small attempt at what my book can achieve. That's why it's taking so long, because I get over into the heady part, then I get to the kind of the emotional intelligence part, and then I get to the sustainability part, and then I get to the science and all the research, and I've done lots of interviews with amazing people. And so the beauty of it is each chapter can kind of keep growing, or I can grow it to be, maybe that's just another book or another idea. Yeah. So as long as I feel like I can give back and do something good, I really want to get it out there, because I want every human to experience these things and have less stress and less anxiety in their lives. Because, life is complicated, and we need those things to help us.
Yeah.
I hope that helps explain it. It's a little bit tricky because there's so many layers. I do plan to travel the world and document what I consider to be the most soulful, that passed my test of neuroscience, beauty, and soul. And I plan to document that too. And I'm working on how to get a film crew together and really talk about, why around the world these places have changed our evolution as human beings, and what are the principles they maybe all have in common, right? And that we can all have that little tiny bit in our lives too. It may not be as grand, but we can take some of those pieces, and it can just bring us, experiences that release more endorphins.
Yeah. No, I mean, it sounds amazing. And I think it's knowledge somewhere we all are craving, because those questions do come up. And I think somewhere people are thinking about this and wondering. And if anything, this year has certainly shown us how we need to think back to every action we're taking and how we're living and what we're creating for the future. I think incredible timing, and it takes time to create and bring together all these concepts. So totally understand them, but we will eagerly wait.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Eagerly wait. Yeah, no, it sounds incredible. And I know we could go on for a really long time, but I'm cognizant of our time as well. And I kind of had one last question just to kind of wrap up today, or give people some, one last little piece. And it's a bit tricky because it's a summative question, but if you had to summate a lot of what we spoke about today and what you know in your knowledge, just to the average person who is experiencing an environment 24/7, how do you create an environment that both reflects your soul, so it's true to who you are, but it also nurtures it, continues to nurture it, and then also maximizes neuro potential? How do you do that at the simplest, most summative level? And I know that's a tough one.
Well, I think it's an opportune question, because we're all in our environments a lot more than we have been with the COVID pandemic. And I've thought a lot about it, because so many of us around the planet, So it's kind of a beautiful thing that it's a collective awareness now, that we're realizing that we're in our environments a lot more. So it becomes this question you're asking becomes even more real for people, because a lot of people will come and go in their homes or their environments, and they're out in their offices or out in the world. So we're in our environments so much. So I believe you need to, like we touched on earlier, when you come in the front door, first off, what's that like? Is there a favorite plant by your front door? Is there a bell? Is there a symbol of something, or a drawing, or something that makes you feel like it's connected to you and to your soul? And I really mean this very sincerely, with your soul. It's the truest, it's really the most personal part of yourself. It's the truest, deepest, kind of most private, but it's your deep personal sense of calm, that you're in your center. And maybe the rest of your family won't understand it, but you say, no, I have this little bell or this little pot or this certain mat. How do you enter your environment to start? What's the mood it sets for you? Do you feel like you're coming home? Are you in your safe place? And then when you come into your environment, kind of how does it impact you? You might go back to your kind of pattern or your habits, but just think about what you interact with without it being overwhelming. It could be as simple as, like I said before, a cup you use, the cups you use, the silverware, the daily dishware, how you eat. Do you take the time to sit at the table, or do you eat at the counter, or do you, even if it's takeout, do you move it to a plate? Because that plate has an impact on you. That box you get the food in, is it sustainable? Little things. I don't want it to be overwhelming, what I'm saying. I want it to be an awareness that you can actually make a change that may make you release more of the feel-good neurotransmitters, so you can go into your life refreshed and feel good and be at your best, and also deal with all the current stressors in our lives right now. For example, I eat in my living room table. It's round, it's low. And I had an experience in Buenos Aires once at a beautiful home where half of us sat at sofas and half sat at tables. And I tell you, that experience transformed me. I sat at their sofa in their little off the dining room. And I thought, people need to sit at sofas more when they eat, and change the environment. The dining room isn't so formal, you're comfortable. And I have a certain way of, bringing fresh flowers or leaves in from outside, nothing fancy. So simple things you can do. It's just simply think about where you're eating your dinner. Do you like that location? Should you think outside the box? Should you change where you sit down and have your dinner? Would you rather sit on a pillow? Would you rather sit in the lounge chair or a sofa? Lower the table. It's not a big deal. Cut the legs down. I mean, there's things you can do. You don't need to be scared. Yeah. And think about what's around you. Does it bring you joy, or does it even just bring you a sense of happiness or calm? And if it doesn't, maybe it's time to go to someone else. And that's okay. Someone else gets a treasure. So don't keep the things in your environment that might have angst for you. And if there's a favorite color, maybe just bring in a piece of fabric or paint one wall. Or I think, bedding's important. Did you buy what kind of bedding did you buy? Because we sleep in our beds. It affects our neurochemistry and our physiology. We absorb things, right? What are we washing? Towels, soap. There's kind of from the Industrial Revolution, we want stuff fast and cheap, and how, getting it, but you can still get things that maybe aren't as expensive, that are healthier for you when you think about it. What's the trigger of the smell of that bar of soap? Do you just buy it because you can buy it in bulk? Or, hey, maybe I can get that soap in liquid form in bulk, and it makes me feel better because the aromatherapy calms me. And that's a design thing, because that bottle has an impact on your shelf. I mean, really the basic tools are that you can take any of the simplest things, a corner in a room, put a chair and a pillow that makes you happy, it's your corner. You can get rid of anything that doesn't make you happy, and just use 4 of the dishes if you only have 4 of your favorites. Get rid of the others, or maybe start to add to your collection. A color of a wall, plant inside your space, an object a treasured object from your family or from your travels or from some favorite experience. It's in line of sight, because you go, I remember that, because that memory makes me happy. So these are little tools, and you can change light bulbs. I mean, little tiny things, right, that don't seem so overwhelming. And you can order them online if you don't want to go out to a store because you don't want to be out in public, right? But this pandemic is really, actually, I believe in a crisis, there's opportunity, or there's danger and opportunity. There's yin and yang. So we have to look at the opportunity we've all been put into our environments. Maybe we've had a little garden, right? We put a fresh food on our plates, and making the garden becomes a community experience. It doesn't have to be, oh gosh, we're all locked up. We go, oh gosh, we're all have to be inside or be in our homes more. Let's look at this as an opportunity. What really brings us happiness or a sense of calm, or maybe, just makes us feel good, not makes us feel agitated, and less stress. It's really important right now. We have these little moments of pause, as simple as they can be, and as simple as a pillow, a color, a dish, a chair, where you eat your meals. I mean, it's really a light bulb. It's pretty amazing, the simple things, how they can be transformative if we open our mind and our body to it, right? It's just an awareness, Like you might not have thought about it before. You go, oh gosh, maybe that cup really did change, that mug changed how I have my coffee or tea. Absolutely. And it changed my whole state of mind when I began my day. Absolutely. So kind of in a quick summary, sorry, that's a little long-winded.
No, that's perfect. I think that really drives the message. And I think it can be step by step. It's not an overnight transformation. It's, that incremental changes that we can make that can be so transformative. And I think, again, this year probably proved to people how much they can actually adapt.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So, and it's what we need to do to create the future. I think, we all want. So I think it was spot on. So Lisa, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate all your knowledge. I want to share something you said at the Berkeley session, but before I kind of close with that, because it was so beautiful. But before I do close with that and wrap us up for today, any other parting notes from your end? Anything you'd want to close with?
I think, the main thing is, the world has changed forever, and it's really a call to action. I believe this pandemic will never go back to being the same, and it's really a call to action to create healthier ways of living in our world and in our spaces. And I think it's going to bring about a lot of healthy changes, more airflow, ventilation, placement. We're going to learn to be more of a global community and watch out for each other more. I think, I tend to be an optimist, thankfully, and I think we're going to use this opportunity. We'll be cautious. We'll have our awareness, and we will certainly be very aware of what the downside of negative things can be. But I think as a species, we're going to evolve and look at this as an opportunity to create more beauty in our lives, and to have less stress, and to be more of a global watching out for each other, because there'll be more pandemics, and it's a new future we're entering.
New reality. Yeah.
And I think if we can embrace it and be as healthy as possible, that's why being healthy and having a strong immune system, and why having environments that promote health are going to help us endure as a species moving forward and evolve. So I look at this as it's certainly difficult. There's no question. But in this difficulty, I think we're going to just see tremendous opportunity to be a healthier, happier species. So that's my little pretty note.
Thank you. I think that was the perfect sort of parting wisdom. So really appreciate that. And I want to just read, the quote from your Berkeley session. And you said, the truest nature of being a designer is to improve the lives of others and to make spaces become sanctuaries and reminders of our better selves, to do our best work in the world. And I mean that, I'm going to keep that forever.
Thank you. That's, maybe I'll start the book with that, because it's absolutely true. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. So Lisa, thank you so much for being here, sharing your wisdom. I know this is going to impact people, and that's what we're about. So thank you for being here and your time. And we're all really looking forward to the book. So we will wait.
You. Okay, I'll keep working hard.
But thank you so much. To everybody who is listening and watching, I will have Lisa's details, the website, all of that linked to the video and the podcast, so you can go and find more information. But thank you so much for being here, and I will catch you all again very soon. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye for now.